Hello everybody! Today we're continuing our discussion of the largest ski resort in Colorado, Vail. There's so much to unpack with Vail, and this video is just 1/5 of our deep dive into making the most of your Vail vacation. In this part, we're discussing the center section of the front side, the area known as Mid-Vail. So with that, let's continue an Insider's Guide to Ski Resorts, Vail. My piece of advice to give you guys is to avoid these 3 areas of the resort. That's it, plain and simple. As always, please put any questions down below. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out. You guys know I'm just kidding. My warning before we even get into any specifics, for real this time, is that these are the busiest areas of the resort, but I'm here to help you make the most of your trip despite whatever busy areas you may desire to explore. So with that, let's pick it up in Vail Village at Gondola 1. Gondola 1 is a beautiful machine. Built in 2012, this 10-person monster people mover features heated seats and, at one point, it had Wi-Fi. I suppose Vail had to justify paying $300 for a single day ticket somehow. With all of this, Gondola 1 sounds like quite the attractive option for getting on the mountain at the beginning of the day, right? Wrong. I would highly recommend taking the Reevaborn Express, which we'll discuss in Part C, or the Born Free Express, which we discussed in Part A, over either of the gondolas, especially Gondola 1. The main problem with Gondola 1 is that it's the only option out of Vail Village. So if you walk all the way through the village and then find a gargantuan lift line, your options are either to walk all the way back through the village or go somewhere else via bus or even more walking, or to wait in the massive line. Because of this, I would highly recommend starting your day at Lion's Head. There, even if one lift has a long line, it's likely that the other won't be too terribly busy. But so despite all this, I'm sure that many of you will start your day at Gondola 1. And seeing the crazy lines in the morning at Gondola 1, you'll probably be afraid to go back to it at all once you're on the mountain. However, in the afternoon, Gondola 1 can be a great place to lap. It doesn't have a ton of good lapping runs, but there are certainly a few. Coming down to the Gondola 1 pod, you have a choice of 2 parallel catwalks. Between Lions Way and Get Along Road, I would recommend Get Along Road because it's less busy than Lions Way. Flowing from Lions Way to Get Along Road are a ton of short and sweet mogul drop-offs. These are fun little runs that I try to incorporate anytime I need to head in that direction. Below Get Along Road here, you have a steep, experts-only wooded area that will then dump you out onto Riva Ridge. The big runs to lap on the gondola are these 3. Giant Steps, Lindsay's, and Bear Tree. I know for sure that Bear Tree is consistently groomed, and I strongly believe that Lindsay's is also groomed. Now, Bear Tree, being the only blue into the Vail Village base, gets insanely busy. And then you take all of the traffic from Bear Tree and cram it onto the narrow Vail Village catwalk, and you can see why I'm going to recommend taking Riva Ridge instead later on in the video. Of these, my favorite lap is Lindsay's by far, and I find that a lap down Spruce Face to Get Along Road to Lindsay's is a really nice lap at about 1:30. Now, over on the looker's right side of the gondola here is this tangled mess of catwalks. Honestly, your best bet is just to avoid them. If you're a beginner, I would highly recommend taking the gondola down instead of trying to cross Bear Tree several times on Get Along. Just think about yourself as a deer trying to cross I-70. Not worth it. If you really do feel the need to risk your life to get one last run in, I would strongly suggest taking Windish Way instead of Vail Village Catwalk because it's so much less busy. There's a green run called 12-to-1 Connector that runs right here that you can then take to get back to Vail Village. For whatever reason, it isn't shown on the trail map. And while we're on this topic, Riva Catwalk ends at its intersection with Windish and does not continue straight into the village like the map shows. A vast majority of people, when taking Get Along or Lion's Way, don't follow them all the way to the Gondola 1 runs, which is why Gondola 1 can actually be good to lap in the middle of the day or early afternoon. A vast majority of people get on the Avanti Express instead of going all the way down. The Avanti Express 6-pack, Chair 2, is one of the busiest lifts on the mountain. The reason is actually quite simple. It serves a pod of a ton of groomers. Most of these runs to the looker's right of the lift are groomed, at minimum, every other night. This is a very popular area for practicing parallel turns. It's also a very popular area for families to ski together. My favorite of these is Picaroon. Now, these runs are rated Black Diamond for a reason. They'll lull you to sleep and then all of a sudden get much steeper. If you can't ski blacks, you can ski the blue section and then escape on the Cold Feet catwalk over here. The Avanti Express is the only lift on the mountain that has gates and a loading carpet, so be prepared. I've seen a lot of people who are used to skiing themselves onto the lift get surprised by the Avanti technology and cause the lift to have to slow or stop. Don't be that person. Avanti gets really busy, but there's not really anywhere else to go. My best offer of an alternative is if the line is too long for you, take Lower Lion's Way and head over to the Lion's Head side. Avanti drops you off onto Eagle's Nest Ridge. If you're coming from 3, 17, or 3 and heading for Lion's Head, Eagle's Nest Ridge gets extremely flat and even a little bit uphill at the top of Avanti, so keep up some speed. Additionally, the run gets extremely crowded from people organizing and preparing for their run after unloading Avanti, so beware of your surroundings and ski with caution in the vicinity of the top terminal. Just to the lookers left of Avanti are a series of 3 groomers that run from Avanti back over to Mid-Vail. Of these 3, the Meadows is by far the busiest, but it's also super wide and doesn't ever feel all that crowded. Regardless, I would still recommend taking Mid-Vail Express or Over Easy instead. These are all nice relaxing runs that aren't crowded or rushed like the runs surrounding them. In between here, there are also some short mogul blacks that aren't overly difficult in the world of blacks at Vail. All of this terrain is lappable via the Wildwood Express quad, Chair 3. Now, in low snow years, the Meadows is about as consistent of snow quality as you can get anywhere on the mountain, so that's my pick. It's super wide and is groomed edge to edge, allowing beginners plenty of space to work on their turns. Up above the Meadows is Hunky Dory, which is an often groomed blue, and Kangaroo Cornice, which is pretty bowl-like. There are also some very small cliffs directly under the lift that are great for your first jump if you're becoming the thrill-seeking type. As a whole, Wildwood is often overlooked as a lapping lift because most people only use it to get from one side of the resort to the other. Of all the lifts we'll talk about in this part, Wildwood is often the least busy. Right across from Wildwood is the Mountaintop Express 6-pack, Chair 4. As you come down the runout, right between 3 and 4, you'll see entrances to the lift lines. However, if you want to get a little bit further up in line, go around the bottom terminal of 3 to your left and enter the lines from next to the restaurant. Generally, that side entrance of the maze is just a little bit shorter than the lines in the middle. I'll say that 4 is one of the busiest lifts at Vail, but my guess is that on a day-to-day basis, it is the busiest lift in Vail. What I can tell you for certain is that Mountaintop serves the most popular terrain in all of Vail. The Green Run Swingsville is the busiest run in the resort. I don't need statistics to back that up, all you have to do is look at it and you'll understand. Additionally, Chair 4 is the primary gateway for people coming up Gondola 1 to access the back bowls. So yeah, Chair 4 gets busy. I gave you guys my one tip for shortening up the lines just a little bit, but at the end of the day, Chair 4 is one of those that you just have to deal with. Just kidding. You guys know I know an alternative. If Chair 4 is absolutely swamped, as it often is, and you don't want to wait in lines, you can take Transmontane and then take Northwoods Express up instead. Northwoods gets long lines as well, but they're generally shorter than Mountaintops. We'll discuss that further in Part C. The top of Chairs 4, 11, and 5 is generally referred to as Patrol HQ. You'll actually see and hear that quite a bit whenever you seek directions at Vail, so now you know where that is. Additionally, if you want to avoid Chair 4 when heading to the back bowls, you can take Chair 3 and then ski down the Sundown Bowl instead, but beware, the Sundown Bowl is all blacks. The Mountaintop pod has a bunch of relatively short groomers, and people love them. Ram's Horn is my favorite in this pod, but all of the runs can be really fun, albeit busy. There are some good large cliffs directly underneath the lift for all of you adrenaline junkies out there. Ram's Horn and Swingsville have very good snowmaking, so similarly to the Meadows, they have consistently decent conditions, even in low snow years. This can, however, make them pretty icy. Now, it can be a bit confusing at the base area, as Meadows crosses around all of the runs and goes around underneath Mountaintop. Just make sure you're reading signs. There are certain patches that are ungroomed, and you don't want to accidentally wander into one of those unprepared. The final run to be mentioned, technically part of the Chair 4 pod, is Riva Ridge. Riva Ridge is a super wide, relatively steep groomer. It's an instant classic, and one I suggest anyone and everyone capable of doing it tries at least once. If you can't ski blacks, you can take Transmontane to the blue sections. Riva Ridge is a favorite of many for the ability to get speed. Lower down is a super steep drop-off called Tourist Trap. The Blue Run Compromise is indeed a good compromise, as it's actually pretty wide and obviously isn't as steep, icy, and dangerous as Tourist Trap. Down at the bottom of Riva Ridge, you can go left and take Mill Creek Road back to Vail Village, but I would suggest that everyone stay on Riva Catwalk as it's much less flat, and then you can take the aforementioned 12:1 connector if you desire to return to Vail Village. Riva Ridge is by far the best way to return to Vail Village at the end of the day. Well, that about wraps it up for the Mid-Vail section of the resort. Go ahead and check out parts A, C, D, and E right after this if you haven't already, which discuss the rest of the mountain. Or go check out another episode of Insider's Guide. As always, please leave any questions down below. Thank you all for watching. All my love, I'm out.